Happy Monday, everybody. All right, we're going to kind of jump right in today and talk about, how Rome goes from a republic to an empire politically. And that's what we're going to be talking about today and tomorrow. Today is kind of more that foundational piece of understanding as to kind of how the ball starts rolling that direction. And tomorrow is all kinds of drama with the first triumvirate and the assassination of Julius Caesar, and then the second triumvirate and Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and all their drama that they're going to have. And so, but today is kind of more, again, like that foundational understanding of what starts going on. So, last week we started and we talked about Rome geographically. We talked about Rome, from just kind of its very beginnings as a city, and then just kind of their slow build up across the peninsula, being the kind of slow and steady wins the race as far as like acquiring more power, acquiring more land. And again, like by the time that they shift from republic to empire, they are really the mightiest dominating force in the Mediterranean. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they beat Carthage in the Punic Wars. So so here we go. What were some of the reasons for unrest in the Roman Republic? Because obviously you don't go from a republic to essentially a military dictatorship if everything is all peachy keen. All right, so I want y'all to keep these 4 bullet points in your mind, though, even moving forward into Rome as an empire, because these will continue to kind of plague Rome, and it will continue to be a problem for Rome all the way up into their fall, which is in 476 AD. Spoiler alert. Sorry. So here we go. Increasing inequality between wealthy landowners and small farmers. So this, if you want to break it down into kind of a modern way of thinking, mom and pop stores have a hard time competing against like Walmarts and Targets and these big stores. And that's basically what started going on with small farmers versus really wealthy landowners that had a large amount of land and that could continue to buy more and more and more land. The small farmers couldn't compete with them in trade, they couldn't compete with them in pricing, and so they got kind of pushed out. And so what would happen, of course, is these small farmers would go to the cities to try to make it there and find work. So, but then they would get to these cities, and because Rome was going around conquering and therefore also enslaving the conquered a lot of times, you have this increasing use of slave labor. Well, the slaves were taking up all of the jobs. So the Roman citizens that were moving to the cities didn't have anything to do. They couldn't find jobs, they couldn't find work. And so you have this increasing urban population of landless poor. And again, this is going to be a problem because Rome starts to feel like, well, we got to take care of our Roman citizens. And so all of the Roman citizens that, couldn't find work and couldn't find jobs because of this increasing use of slave labor were put on like welfare programs. And this starts to really mess with the overall like treasury or like bank account of the Roman Empire, and actually helps lead to the decline and fall. So that's why I told you, like, don't just think this is just a problem during the Republic. Like, this kind of stuff remains a problem even into the empire. And then, control of the government by the wealthy. Well, I mean, the wealthy are never going to try to like abolish slavery or, try to create reform, because then that will hinder their own economic prosperity. And so you have, just these 4 things kind of economically working against the prosperity of the Republic. And then you do have some people that tried to create reform. These are the 2 most famous ones. You have the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. And they come in and they're like, okay, we're going to take public land and we are going to distribute it to small farmers to try to kind of help with this dynamic that we're seeing a problem with. Now, The Gracchi brothers a lot of times get a little bit too much like martyrdom credit, in my opinion. Like, oh, they tried to reform and they were just killed for it, which is, again, spoiler alert, yeah, they both get assassinated, but they weren't doing this for nothing. It was one of those, yes, we're going to try to give public land to these small farmers so that they can try to compete, so we don't have as much landless pouring into the cities. But in exchange for, hey, if we can pull this land reform off, it was, you need to vote for us, because, the people that they were going to eventually give the land to, had they pulled off the reform, were voting citizens of Rome. And so, again, it wasn't like something for nothing. They were trying to create this reform so that they could get more votes. And that's really why they got killed by other senators. And the Senate was kind of like a dog eat dog world. There was lots of assassinations, lots of intrigue. And anyways, the Gracchi brothers end up, again, they get assassinated because other senators were fearing that, of course, they were going to lose land that they wanted, and then they were also going to, lose votes if the Gracchi brothers had pulled this off, by those small farmers. They would have lost those votes. Okay, another thing that really starts to shift the Republic towards, again, essentially a military dictatorship, is you got to look at the military. So Marius and Sulla are two political rivals in the 2nd century BC. And they are both consuls from time to time. And again, like huge rivals, they can't stand one another. And Marius is a plebeian and is much more like in tune with kind of like the common folk, you could say, of Rome. And he sees how much, how many, excuse me, not how much, but how many poor people are in Rome and in the cities with obviously like no jobs. So he's like, okay, we need to reform the military to where we can get these people into the military. Because prior to Marius's reform, you had to prove like property and wealth consensus checks, and you had to provide your own weaponry and your own like armor and stuff. Well, I mean, a poor person can't do that. And if you don't have land, then you can't be in the military. And I mean, a landless poor person that's living in the city is not going to have anything to show for himself as far as land goes. And so Marius is like, this is stupid. We need all of these people that are landless poor that are living in the cities. We need them to be doing something. And if we're going to have welfare programs that potentially pay them to do nothing, then why don't we get them to go into the army and utilize them? And so there's this huge number of people, men, of course, that then go and get conscripted kind of into the army. And they love Marius for this. It gives them a purpose. It gives them a job. They're allowed to make some money. And of course, being in the Roman army was also considered this huge honor. So, all of a sudden you've got somebody that had nothing, this poor person living in the city that couldn't find a job, that had absolutely nothing, is now in the Roman military and being trained by the consul himself. And so it's like, oh my gosh, wow, thank you so much. And so the common kind of poor man that benefited due to these reforms looks at Marius as, again, this savior. And so they become highly, highly loyal to him and not really the Roman state. Well, of course, you can imagine Sulla, his big rival, can't stand this. Sulla is, again, he's more of like the patrician, I don't like the common folk being in the military mindset. And so Marius and Sulla, long story short, are going to finally square off in 2 civil wars. And, this is really the big initial breakdown of the Republic, because you have these 2 kind of competing rival consuls, competing rival generals that have the loyalty of the military behind them and not Rome itself. Sulla's going to go into Rome twice and again, name himself dictator. And Sulla is going to essentially win this civil war back and forth. And, you know, his winnings and his proclaiming of dictatorship is going to set an example, of course, to later generals that, hey, if you have the loyalty of the army and you have the strength of the army behind you, you can kind of get away with anything. And so it sets a precedence for that. And so I need you to kind of keep that in your brain, you know, for tomorrow is the person that has the loyalty of the military and the person that runs the military and controls the military is really the one with all of the power. You know, that's that shift. Okay. So this video that I want you to watch is really great. It summarizes stuff that I talked about last week. So it will be a really good reminder of some things. And he goes all the way up to Marius and Sulla's civil war, and then he stops, just like I'm doing today. So tomorrow, again, we're going to talk about Julius Caesar and the first triumvirate and his horrible, bloody, crazy assassination. And then we'll talk about the second triumvirate and, of course, Mark Antony and Cleopatra and all of their drama. Can't make this stuff up, people. All right, so happy Monday again. That's it for today. I hope you guys had a great weekend and y'all are ready for a week of Rome. So I will see you tomorrow with all the fun. Bye-bye.